Here are the top stories for today, June 11, 2020. The government urges returning overseas Filipino workers to submit names and other pertinent data before going home. Local officials join calls to pass the proposed anti-terror bill. President Duterte vows to preserve and build ties between the Philippines and China amid COVID-19 and other challenges. And IDPs receive free house plans as they rebuild their homes in Marawi City. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. A new protocol will be implemented in the processing of returning overseas Filipino workers. The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, on Wednesday said returning OFWs will now be required to submit pertinent information to the agency before they leave their host countries.
Gusto kong iparating Rocky sa lahat ng ating mga kababayan na under the new protocols of the Interagency Task Force, yung mga OFW na babalik sa ating bansa, before they leave the country of origin, they will notify us 5 days before their departure, so that when we get their names, their skills, and their final destination, ipaparating natin sa mga local government units.
Meanwhile, those who will arrive in the country will immediately undergo polymerase chain reaction or PCR testing.
In a period of 1 to 3 days, malalaman natin kung negative o positive yung OFW. Ngayon, kung negative, we now, as per arrangement, we will now allow them to go home to their final place of destination. Kasi alam na ng mga local government units kung saan sila tutuloy, na darating sila at napaghandaan na rin sila.
Bello said they are expecting some 16,000 OFWs to arrive in the country this month. As of Monday, a total of 42,298 OFWs have returned to their provinces. They were provided transportation back to their respective hometowns via air, land, and sea. For many of you who are asking what is the difference between the BALIK Probinsya and HATID Probinsya, Ron Dulfo will tell us why in this report.
The BALIK Probinsya program and the HATID Probinsya program are two government initiatives with different objectives and target beneficiaries, Executive Director Marcelino Escalada Jr. said. The BALIK Probinsya program is a long-term program of the government intended for Metro Manila residents who want to return to the provinces for good. Under the program, the government will introduce a sustainable project scheme and rationalized system of fiscal incentives for export-oriented and domestic-oriented enterprises, as well as support for micro, small, and medium enterprises to qualified beneficiaries. The BALIK Probinsya program aims to address Metro Manila's congested urban areas by encouraging people to return to their home provinces. On the other hand, the HATID Probinsya program is a short-term humanitarian effort to assist residents stranded in Metro Manila due to travel restrictions imposed during the quarantine period. Stranded OFWs are urged to coordinate with the Department of Labor and Employment. Stranded students are encouraged to coordinate with the Office of the President, Presidential Management Staff, or the Department of Transportation. And stranded tourists may coordinate with the Department of Tourism. The DSWD will assess and evaluate these stranded individuals and will provide recommendations and assistance. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Rom Dulfo.
Local executives in various provinces in the country called for the passage of the anti-terrorism bill. They also appealed for their constituents to support the measure for the protection of the people. More on this from Marita Moahe.
Davao Oriental Governor and Chairman of the Regional Peace and Order Council 11 Nelson Dayanghirang expressed his strong support for the passage of the anti-terrorism bill, saying this will boost the country's campaign in the fight against terrorism. Dayanghirang said this will ensure the safety and well-being of the Filipino people and will allow for the consistent strides toward peace and development. He said only those who are indifferent and sympathize with the terrorists will oppose the bill. Aside from Dayang Hirang, Tugigaraw City Mayor Jefferson Soriano and San Mateo Isabela Mayor Gregorio Alipio Pua both declared their support on the passage of the bill, saying peace and harmony will help the country progress. Meanwhile, Romblon Representative Eliandro Jesus Madrona said he thoroughly studied the bill before voting for it. He said this is the best weapon we will have to deter the dreaded terrorist acts planned against malls and other public places by extremists. Quirino Governor and Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines President Dakila Cua said some executives have reservations with the measure while others think that it still needs improvement. While he understands the apprehension of some people on the measure, Cua said any law may be subjected to abuse, even the simplest ones such as traffic laws. Cua said the bill is widely talked about because it is relevant to the times, citing terrorist attacks all over the world. He said the government must have the means and the capability to preempt, act, and secure our people. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
In Zamboanga del Norte, government troops have prevented an extortion activity of the NPA rebels. Lieutenant Colonel Don Templo Nuevo of the Army's 44th Infantry Battalion said an encounter broke out Tuesday afternoon while the troops were checking on the reported extortion activities of the NPA in Sitio Walawanca, Barangay Tinuyop in Leon Postigo. No one was killed or wounded on the government side during the 5-minute firefight. The troops recovered an AK-47 assault rifle, an M16A1 baby Armalite, and subversive documents with high intelligence value. President Duterte has postponed his scheduled meeting with the IATF-EID on Davao City on Thursday. Malacanang said Duterte would instead meet with them in Manila on Monday. Duterte was supposed to hold a meeting with the IATF-EID in Davao City on Thursday to discuss the quarantine classifications in the country. General community quarantine is imposed in Pangasinan, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, Metro Manila, Central Visayas, Zamboanga City, Davao City, Albay, Cebu City, and Mandaue until June 15. The rest of the country, on the other hand, is under modified GCQ. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said areas under GCQ except Metro Manila and Cebu City might be under MGCQ beginning June 16 as the government needs to assess whether Metro Manila and Cebu City can afford to be under MGCQ. Meanwhile, the Presidential Security Group will stay on high alert status over the health and safety of President Duterte despite the easing of quarantine restrictions in Metro Manila. PSG Commander Colonel Jesus Durante III said all health and safety protocols would continue to be enforced within the palace and other areas frequented by the president. All screening procedures initially established would still be in effect, such as the mandatory rapid antibody detection testing and disinfection of engagement areas. There would also be other existing health security protocols, such as the no invitation, no entry policy, and events would only be restricted to small group private meetings. Still to come, President Duterte vows to preserve the build ties between the Philippines and China amid COVID-19 and other challenges. A lawmaker in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao issues a quarterly newsletter to fight fake news. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Kakagaling ko lang ng grocery. Siyempre, hindi ko hahayaan na pumasok ang COVID-19 sa bahay at mapahamak ang pamilya ko. Kaya iiwan ko ang sapatos ko sa labas. At ngayon, maghuhugas ako ng kamay ng 20 seconds. O ayan, wala na ang virus. Tandaan, buhay ng pamilya natin na nakasalalay. Let's heal as one.
Alam niyo ba ba na pumapasok ang COVID-19 sa ating katawan sa pamamagitan ng mata, ilong at bibig. Kaya lagi kaming conscious dito sa bahay kapag umuubo kami. Lagi kami naghuhugas ng kamay in 20 seconds. Pag lumalabas kami, lagi namin suot ang mask. Lagi lang natin tatandaan mga mamshi. Buhay ng pamilya natin ang nakasalalay dito. Let's go!
President Duterte vowed to preserve and build ties between the Philippines and China as the two nations mark the 45th anniversary of their diplomatic relations on June 9. In a letter to Chinese President Xi Jinping, Duterte emphasized the need to strengthen the Philippine-China partnership amid challenges including the COVID-19 health crisis. He said the two nations' anniversary is an auspicious time to reaffirm shared aspirations and the principles they have committed to uphold as enshrined in the joint communique signed on June 9, 1975. He also described China as a close neighbor and valued friend, ensuring Xi of even greater peaceful and friendly cooperation in the coming years. On Tuesday, Malacanang said the relationship between the Philippines and China is now at the renaissance stage and is hopeful that the sea road between the two nations would be resolved. Meanwhile, President Duterte and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi strengthened their bilateral cooperation in addressing the pandemic. During their engaging and productive telephone conversation on Tuesday night, Duterte and Modi acknowledged the need for Manila and New Delhi to be partners in fighting COVID-19. Duterte took note of India's 2.82% COVID-19 fatality rate, which is among the lowest in the world. He also commended India for its efforts to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. Modi assured Duterte that the Philippines would get affordable medicines and COVID-19 pharmaceutical products, including hydroxychloroquine that is being used for the treatment of some COVID-19 patients. Efforts are being laid out to test, trace, and treat to fight COVID-19. More on this from Chris Mundo.
More local government units and government offices are implementing measures to fight COVID-19. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara on Wednesday ordered the disinfection of the DOJ premises after 59 of its employees have tested positive for COVID-19 during rapid testing. These employees will have to stop reporting for work and will undergo swab tests immediately. He said the DOJ will still continue with its normal operations as the rest may work from home. In Cotabato City, the city police chief on Thursday ordered all officers and non-uniformed personnel to undergo rapid tests after 2 active police officers turned out positive for COVID-19. Police Director Lieutenant Colonel Richard Fiesta said all active and NUP police personnel will be tested to ensure they are safe from the disease, while those who will be tested positive will be given immediate medical attention. Fiesta also reiterated his earlier directive to all police units to exercise self-restraint in performing their duties to prevent infection. He also vowed to work for the acquisition of additional personal protective equipment to protect the police frontliners and their families. In Dumaguete, a joint expanded contact tracing is now underway to determine the source of transmission of COVID-19, which has afflicted a 39-year-old woman from Barangay Bagakay. The woman, her husband, and their 6-year-old child are now under quarantine, while a portion of Bagakay, specifically Malangsuba area, where the family resides, is currently under tight security with controlled movement to stem a possible spread of the coronavirus. City Health Officer Dr. Maria Sara Talia earlier said they have to determine if the case is a local transmission or community acquired, as the woman does not have a history of travel. In South Cotabato, the provincial government is eyeing to register around 16,000 business establishments until the end of the month in its newly launched COVID-19 contact tracing system. Emmanuel Humilia, head of the South Cotabato Economic Investment and Promotion Center, said they have opened various registration modes to capture all businesses in the province in time for the full rollout of the system. Under the system, local residents will be registered and issued with CCTS cards with QR codes that they may use when entering business establishments and offices. Registered establishments will be given access to a mobile application developed by the provincial government to scan the CCTS cards. The digital logs will provide a name, contact number, as well as date and time that a person enters an establishment. This is to facilitate faster contact tracing in a case of COVID-19 case was detected. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismundo.
Even President Duterte's chief of legal counsel is not spared from dummy FB accounts. In a virtual presser, Secretary Salvador Panelo said he himself is a victim of dummy Facebook accounts. He told opposition lawmakers that because he was also found to have bogus accounts, there is no truth to their allegation that only critics of the anti-terror bill are being targeted. Panelo showed printouts of his real Facebook account, which was created by his former student, saying it has been inactive for about 4 years. Even before the Congress passed the anti-terror bill, Panelo said fake social media accounts are already rampant on social media. Meanwhile, a member of Parliament of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority has come up with a quarterly publication to fight the proliferation of fake news on social media. The office of MP Maisara Damdamun Latif has come up with a quarterly newsletter, Empowering Voices, which targets to give relevant and timely information about the BARMM situation on the ground. It says the newsletter aims to serve vulnerable sectors and at-risk families by giving them voices via online media or physical presence. The Bangsamoro Transition Authority is the lawmaking body of the BARMM. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources is fast-tracking the documentation, permits, and approval of crematoriums in the country. DENR Undersecretary Benny Antiporda said they are doing this to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Antiporda said existing data, according to the DENR Environmental Management Bureaus, showed that only some 89 crematoriums, with only 69 of them being operational. Of this number, 26 are located in Metro Manila, with only 16 operating and are capable of cremating 66 bodies per day. Meanwhile, the DNR has issued a memorandum to the Department of the Interior and Local Government seeking assistance in informing local government units on proper solid waste segregation. The memorandum states that LGUs must ensure proper solid waste segregation, particularly on food wastes, residual wastes, and use personal protective gears, sustained regular garbage collection, and proper waste disposal in all DENR-approved sanitary landfills. A lawmaker on Wednesday urged President Rodrigo Duterte to call for a special session in Congress to pass the proposed 1.3 trillion peso stimulus package to help the economy recover from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Cagayan de Oro City Representative Rufus Rodriguez said financial aid should be available as the economy begins to gain momentum with the easing of quarantine restrictions in many areas of the country. The proposed package is contained in the Accelerated Recovery and Investment Stimulus for the Economy bill, which the House of Representatives passed on third and final reading last week. Meanwhile, the Senate's proposed stimulus is part of the second installment of the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, which proposes a 140 billion peso standby fund to finance COVID-19 response and recovery programs. On the other hand, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III cautioned lawmakers against approving measures that the national budget cannot finance. South Korea's flag carrier, Korea Air, has announced the cancellation of its INCHEON-MANILA flights from June 11 to July 31st, except on June 21st. In an advisory posted on its social media account, KE said Manila-bound flights KE623 from June 11 to 24 and KE621 on June 11 to 30 and July 1st to 31st are canceled. The carrier said Philippine aviation authorities were not able to give them the international arrival slots for June 12 to 24. It also said the cancellation was due to international arrival restrictions and the constraints in Manila's quarantine capacity. KE, however, noted that its outbound flights from Manila to Incheon would continue daily until July 31st. Affected passengers, meanwhile, may rebook their tickets without a rebooking fee. They may also reroute their tickets without charge within ticket validity or opt for a refund. With more Filipinos turning to the internet to conduct daily business under the new economy, a bill is now in the Senate seeking to make online transactions easier and faster, as well as to strengthen the country's digital economy. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian pushed for the swift passage of Senate Bill No. 1591, or the proposed Internet Transactions Act. Gatchalian said e-commerce provides consumers with time-saving options and access to the swift delivery of goods and services. He said e-commerce also presents value for money as setup costs are lower and operating costs are kept at a minimum. Gatchalian said SBN 1591 would resolve key concerns in the country's e-commerce industry, such as lack of trust, payment mechanisms, lack of governing entities that can fight cybercrime, and online consumer complaints, among others. Citing a study by Google and Temasek, the Philippine internet economy posted a gross merchandise value of $7 billion in 2019. The country's e-commerce market remains at 1.6% of GDP. Up next, the DFA reports 29 new cases and 51 recoveries from COVID-19 among overseas Filipinos. And IDPs receive free house plans as they rebuild their homes in Marawi City. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Mga mommies, pagdating sa COVID-19, dapat hindi tayo kampante. Bagamat hindi nakikita ang sakit na ito ay nakamamatay. At hanggang ngayon wala pa rin lunas. Kaya protektahan natin ang ating pamilya. Laging maghugas ng kamay, huwag hahawakan ng mukha, at manatili sa bahay para makaiwas sa sakit na ito. Tandaan, buhay ng pamilya natin ang nakasalalay dito. Let's hear this one.
Hi Caps! Kamusta?
Well, ito dahil sa COVID-19, medyo stress.
Okay lang yan, Caps. Napagdaanan ko din yan.
Ano kaya pwede natin gawin, no?
Kung nararamdaman mo na gulong-gulo ka na sa mga naririnig mo, sa mga nababasa mo, mag-pause ka muna, saka ka huminga ng malalim.
Buti na lang tumawag ka. Iba talaga pag may nangangamusta.
A strong body starts with a strong mind.
Tama. Let's heal as one.
The Department of Foreign Affairs reports 29 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 51 new recoveries among Filipinos abroad. 2 new fatalities in the Middle East were also logged on June 10. The DFA says it continues to monitor the status of overseas Filipinos through its foreign service posts and stands ready to assist returning Filipinos affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. There are at least 2,702 overseas Filipinos still undergoing treatment abroad. Meanwhile, the fatalities are highest in the Americas with 153, followed by Middle East Africa with 136, Europe with 91, and Asia-Pacific region with 2. The Department of Tourism, or DOT, is looking at introducing travel corridors, or the so-called travel bubble, once restrictions have relaxed and protocols are in place. These corridors would allow the reopening of Philippine destinations with zero COVID-19 cases to foreign tourists from infection-free nations. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat said the travel bubble is something other countries that have decreasing number of cases, such as Australia and New Zealand, have already been doing. While the Philippines is open to adopting this innovation, she said stringent measures will remain in place once the initiative pushes through. She said DOT is now in talks with its Australian partners and is pushing for direct flights from Australia to the safe and virtually COVID-free locations that may soon open in the Philippines. In our foreign news, new coronavirus cases spiked again in South Korea on Wednesday, reaching the highest point seen in recent weeks and pushing authorities to consider enforcing more stringent safety measures. A total of 50 new COVID-19 cases, including 43 local infections and 2 fatalities, were reported by the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Seoul remains at the center of the outbreak, and authorities are considering imposing stricter social distancing rules in the densely populated area. Tougher quarantine measures have already been implemented in the capital area, which will remain in place until June 14. Authorities are warning that South Korea may have to roll back to strict social distancing if virus cases do not subside. In continued efforts to aid the people of war-torn Marawi, the National Housing Authority, or NHA, provided architectural and engineering plans to displaced residents who are rebuilding their homes in the city. More on this from Christine Lynn Viajante.
Aga Khan is just one of 50 internally displaced persons in Marawi who received free architectural plans from the National Housing Authority. The design he wanted was carried out accurately in the way he visualized his new home. He was delighted with the free professional services he received.
Siyempre masaya kasi libre yan, hindi nabayaran sa initso. Libre, sa iba na pwede mo mabayaran ng malaki, pero sa initso libre, walang bayad. Kaya nagpapasalamat ako sa initso. Okay na okay talaga yung administration ni DUTERTE.
Aside from the architectural design, NHA also provided the engineering plans, which includes the electrical and plumbing designs with its estimated costs. This is one of the major requirements of the IDPs to be able to claim a building permit in the reconstruction of their properties inside the most affected area of the city.
Yung NHA will help kasi yun ang pinakamahal yung gawa ng plano. Nagbigay kami ng tulong na free talaga, free everything. In fact, yung mga engineers namin, kasi ang building permit is professional tax. Pinabayad na, personal nila sila nagbayad. Pipirma doon sa mga from electrical, plumbing, and civil engineer and architect.
These services are under the Katagumbala program launched last July 2019 by the Task Force Bangon Marawi together with the local government of the city, Office of the Building Official, and DENR to help the affected residents in processing the documents needed for them to rebuild their war-torn homes. Currently, there are 482 homeowners who already started the repair and reconstruction of their houses, and 500 pending applications at the Office of the Building Official are to be reviewed and approved. The slowing down was caused by the 2-month enhanced community quarantine in the city due to the challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. TFBM and LGU Marawi assure to process these documents together with its commitment to fast-track infrastructure projects that the government intends to build in the most affected area. For PNA Newsroom, Christine Lynn Viajante of PIA Iligan City Information Center.
The Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council has directed all local disaster councils across Bicol to be on red alert status as it braces for a low-pressure area. The region is preparing for a low-pressure area that is expected to affect Bicol until Friday. Claudio Yucot, Office of Civil Defense Bicol Regional Director and RDRRMC Chairperson, ordered the activation of the Regional Emergency Operations Centers to be on standby and to operate on a 24/7 basis. UCOD said sailing will be suspended in all ports for all types of sea vessels once storm signal number 1 is hoisted. Pag-asa says if the LPA would intensify into a tropical depression, it will be named Buchoy. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. The government urges returning overseas Filipino workers to submit names and other pertinent data before going home. Local officials join calls to pass the proposed anti-terror bill. President Duterte vows to preserve and build ties between the Philippines and China amid COVID-19 and other challenges. And IDPs receive free house plans as they rebuild their homes in Marawi City. Thank you for watching another edition of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo. Good day and stay safe.